Tracking the evolutionary relationships of the various subspecies of modern lions can be a tricky affair. As far as paleontologists can tell, the Barbary lion evolved from a population of European lions, which themselves descended from Asiatic lions, which are still extant, albeit in dwindling numbers, in modern-day India. Whatever its ultimate heritage, the Barbary lion shares one dubious honor with most lion subspecies, having been wiped off the face of the earth by human encroachment and the dwindling of its once expansive habitat. The Barbary lion, also known as the Atlas lion, is an African lion subspecies, formerly native to North Africa, including the Atlas Mountains. The Barbary lion was once long considered one of the biggest lion subspecies, or even the largest of lions and African felidae. Museum specimens of the male Barbary lion were described as having very dark and long-haired manes that extend over the shoulder and to the belly. Head-to-tail length of stuffed males varies from 2.3 to 2.8 meters, or 7.5 to 9.2 feet, and females measure around 2.5 meters, or 8.2 feet. A 19th century hunter described a large account of the weight of wild males was indicated as very heavy and reaching 270 to 300 kilograms or 600 to 660 pounds. But the accuracy of the measurements may be questionable, and the sample size of captive Barbary lions was too small to conclude they were the biggest lion subspecies. Before it became possible to investigate the genetic diversity of lion populations, the color and size of lion manes were thought to be sufficiently distinct morphological characteristics to accord a subspecific status to populations. Results of a long-term study of lions in the Serengeti National Park indicate that various factors such as ambient temperature, nutrition, and level of testosterone influence the color and size of lion manes. Sub-Saharan lions kept in a cool environment of European and North American zoos usually develop bigger manes than their wild counterparts. Barbary lions may have developed long-haired manes because of the temperatures in the Atlas Mountains that are much lower than in other African regions, particularly in winter. Therefore, the size of manes is not regarded as appropriate evidence for identifying Barbary lion ancestry. The Barbary lions inhabited the range countries of the Atlas Mountains, including the Barbary Coast. Some of these areas include Morocco, Algeria, and Maghreb. The Atlas Mountains had cold temperatures when compared to other parts of the African region, especially in the winter. The Barbary lions lived in prides, even when there were not many of them left, especially in eastern Maghreb. In the early 20th century, when Barbary lions were rare, they were sighted in pairs or small family groups comprising a male and female lion, with one or two cubs. Between 1839 and 1942, sightings of wild lions involved solitary animals, pairs, and family units. Analysis of these sightings indicates that lions retained living in prides, even when under increasing persecution, particularly in the eastern Maghreb. The size of prides was likely similar to prides living in sub-Saharan habitats, whereas the density of the Barbary lion population is considered to have been lower than in moister habitats. When Barbary stags and gazelles became scarce in the Atlas Mountains, Barbary lions preyed on herds of livestock that were carefully tended. They also preyed on wild boar and red deer. The Romans used Barbary lions in the Colosseum to battle with gladiators. In the Middle Ages, the lions kept in the menagerie at the Tower of London were Barbary lions, as shown by DNA testing on two well-preserved skulls excavated at the tower in 1936-1937. The skulls were radiocarbon dated to 1280 to 1385 AD and 1420 to 1480 AD. The growth of civilizations along the Nile and in the Sinai Peninsula by the beginning of the second millennium BC stopped the genetic flow by isolating lion populations. Desertification also prevented the Barbary lions from mixing with lions located further south in the continent. Historically, Barbary lions were offered in place of taxes and as gifts to royal families of Morocco and Ethiopia. The rulers of Morocco kept these royal lions through war and insurrection, splitting the collection between zoos when the royal family went briefly into exile. After a respiratory disease nearly wiped out the royal lions in the late 1960s, the current ruler established enclosures in Tamara, near Rabat, Morocco, to house the lions and improve their quality of life. There are currently a small number of royal lions that have the pedigree and physical characteristics to be considered as mostly pure Barbary descendants. Some were returned to the palace when the exiled ruler returned to the throne. In the 19th century and early 20th century, Barbary lions were often kept in hotels and circus menageries. The lions in the Tower of London were transferred to more humane conditions at the London Zoo in 1835 on the orders of the Duke of Wellington. One famous Barbary lion, named Sultan, was kept in the London Zoo in 1896. Typically, the story goes that the last lion was shot in Morocco in 1927 or 1921. But this date is based on rather superficial knowledge of available accounts. A dig into the literature reveals suggestion of later dates by well-established scholars including Cabrera, 1932, Guggisberg, 1963, Himmer, 1978, each of whom made well-researched projections on the dates for likely extinction of lions based on collations of accounts in previous decades. All three of these commentators suggest survival of lions in North America into the 1930s. 5 tested samples of lions from the famous collection of the King of Morocco are not maternally Barbary lions. Nonetheless, genes of the Barbary lion are likely to be present in common European zoo lions, since this was one of the most frequently introduced subspecies. Therefore, many lions in Europe and American zoos, which are managed without subspecies classification, are partly descendants of Barbary lions. In 2006, DNA research revealed that a lion specimen kept in the German Neuwied Zoo originated from the collection of the King of Morocco and is very likely a descendant of a Barbary lion. In a comprehensive study about the evolution of lions, 357 samples of 11 lion populations were examined. Results indicate that 4 Atlas lions from Morocco did not exhibit any unique genetic characteristics. While the historical Barbary lion was morphologically distinct, its genetic uniqueness remains questionable, and the taxonomic status of surviving lions frequently considered Barbary lions, including those that originated from the collection of the King of Morocco, is still unclear. The Living Treasures Wild Animal Park in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, claims to keep a pair of Barbary lions in the park's collection. The Zoo Les Sables d'Olonne, Vendée, France, also claims to have a male and female Atlas lion. The former popularity of the Barbary lion as a zoo animal provides the only hope to ever see it again in the wild in North Africa. Many zoos provide mating programs, which will help to increase the population of the species. After years of research into the science of the Barbary lion and stories of surviving examples, WildLink International, in collaboration with Oxford University, launched its ambitious International Barbary Lion Project. Oxford used the latest DNA techniques to identify the DNA fingerprints of the Barbary lion subspecies. Researchers took bone samples from remains of Barbary lions in museums across Europe, like those in Brussels, Paris, Turin, and others. These samples were returned to Oxford University, where the science team extracted the DNA sequence to identify the Barbary as a separate subspecies. Although the Barbary is extinct, and is certainly extinct in the wild, WildLink International looked to identify a handful of lions in captivity around the world that may have descended from the original Barbary lion. These descendants were to be tested against the DNA fingerprint, and the degree of any hybridization from crossbreeding could then be determined. The best candidates were to then enter a selective breeding program, slated to breed back the Barbary lion. The final phase of the project intended to see the lions released into a national park in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco. Here, we look at an animal that was thought to have become extinct on the Australian mainland thousands of years ago in the island of Tasmania in the early 1900s. But persistent sightings of the striped predator, known as the Tasmanian tiger, have led some researchers to question this. Could there be a small population of them still alive today? Let's take a closer look. The Tasmanian tiger, also known as the Tasmanian wolf and thylacine, was a carnivorous marsupial. It had distinctive wolf-like characteristics, but tiger-like stripes extending down its side from its back. It lived in Australia and some of its surrounding islands during the Pleistocene and into the Holocene. The adults resembled large, short-haired dogs with long, stiff tails. Although not related to dogs, it is a classic example of convergent evolution, in which it evolved very similar dog-like features and occupied a similar niche to dogs that were found elsewhere across the globe. Like all apex predators, it played an important role in the ecosystem in which it lived. They were thought to have preyed upon small to medium-sized prey, but the exact size of their prey has been debated. They were nocturnal and crepuscular, coming out under the cover of darkness and in the twilight hours. Whilst they slept in caves, hollowed-out trees, and under forest debris in the daytime, they hunted out on the open grasslands at night. They likely fed on ground-dwelling birds such as the Tasmanian native hen and the large Tasmanian emu, an extinct species of today's emus. Another flightless bird, the cassowary, would have also been around at the time of the Tasmanian tiger, but they had developed effective defensive strategies, making the emu easier for tigers to hunt. They may have also hunted small mammals. In captivity, however, Tasmanian tigers showed a preference for birds as their prey over other meat offered, and their dentition and bite force were more suited to the hollow bones of birds rather than those of small mammals. Being marsupials, Tasmanian tigers had pouches. They would carry up to 4 young in their pouch for 3 months before the offspring were ready to step out into the world. Adults' bodies were up to 130 centimeters, or 51 inches long, with a 65 centimeter, or 26-inch tail. Their dark stripes were mostly along its lower back, backside, and tail, and they faded as the animal grew older. So, what happened to the Tasmanian tiger that once flourished across much of Australia? On the Australian mainland, it is thought that the dingo outcompeted the Tasmanian tiger for food. It was a more versatile hunter and had a more omnivorous diet, making it more flexible in terms of prey availability. The hyper-carnivorous Tasmanian tiger had no such flexibility in its diet preference. Furthermore, although its bite force was more powerful than that of the dingo, dingoes could take down large prey not only due to the formation of their skulls, but also due to their ability to hunt in packs. In comparison, the Tasmanian tiger was a solitary hunter. The Aborigines began to use dingoes as semi-domesticated dogs, which only encouraged their numbers and saw their populations grow, while the Tasmanian tiger seemed to have little advantage over their competitors. But the demise of the mainland Tasmanian tigers wasn't just down to the dingoes and native people. The genetic diversity of the tigers was very low. This made them vulnerable to not only diseases, but also environmental pressures as well. The Tasmanian tigers were known to be susceptible to facial tumor disease, like their relatives, today's Tasmanian devils. However, scientists don't think the low genetic diversity necessarily solely led to their demise. Recent DNA evidence suggests climate change played its part. They went from being widespread across Australia to extinct from the mainland over a relatively quick period. It is now believed that the most significant cause for this was changes in the climate caused by the El Niño Southern Oscillation pattern. So, it seems it was a combination of factors that led to the extinction of this fascinating animal on mainland Australia. From direct competition from dingoes to the expansion of the Aborigines across their habitat and the changing climate. But mainland Australia isn't where recent sightings of Tasmanian tigers have been made. People have claimed to seen glimpses of the so-called extinct animals on the island of Tasmania, famous for another carnivorous marsupial, the Tasmanian devil. The tigers weren't just native to mainland Australia, they were also endemic to New Guinea, as well as the Australian island state of Tasmania. Scientists know the exact date that this species became extinct. Tragically, on September 7, 1936, the last ever known live Tasmanian tiger, called Benjamin, died in captivity in the Beaumaris Zoo in Hobart. That date has now become a commemorative day in Australia called National Threatened Species Day. In fact, it was ironic that the Australian government finally gave the Tasmanian tiger protection status that very same year, just 2 months before Benjamin's death. This was perhaps a century or so too late. The day the captive individual died, reportedly of neglect, was a sad day in 1936 for zoologists and conservationists across the world, to witness the extinction of an iconic animal, never to be seen again. Or was it never to be seen again? The combination of factors on the mainland that led to its extinction didn't happen on the islands, which is why the Tasmanian tigers survived another few years. But disaster was about to strike. Within 30 years of European settlement on Tasmania, the large flightless Tasmanian emu had been wiped out. This was believed to have been one of the Tasmanian tiger's primary sources of prey, and subsequently, their numbers plummeted. On top of this, many farmers considered the Tasmanian tiger pests, as they were apparently caught killing chickens and sheep on their farms. They earned a bad reputation as sheep killers, cold and ruthless. This has since been disputed because the jaws of the Tasmanian tigers were not thought to be strong enough to kill a sheep. Even so, bounty hunters and farmers alike relentlessly killed the animals, leading further to their demise. Europeans also brought with them dogs, which became feral. These dogs likely competed with the native Tasmanian tigers for food and territory, which probably added to their ultimate extinction. But is it possible that some small population managed to survive, hidden in the deepest parts of Tasmania, away from persecution and away from competition? Maybe. Or at least maybe they survived a lot longer than originally thought. Certainly, persisting in Tasmania into the last century. Now, new evidence has been brought to light, which suggests some may have survived longer than originally reported, and there may even still be a small population alive today. Whilst most researchers believe that this cannot be true, as by now somebody would have at least come across a dead Tasmanian tiger at some point, there is mounting evidence that they may have survived in the wild far longer than the early 1900s. In a new study, scientists evaluated more than 1,200 alleged sightings of Tasmanian tigers since 1910. They aimed to determine how long they survived in the wild based on these reports and new DNA analysis that has since been made possible. They concluded that there would have been some wild individuals surviving at least until the 1950s, sometime after the last known captive specimen died. Even more amazingly, their evidence suggests there is a chance they survived until the 1990s. But there might be a flaw in this research, as many of these sightings are thought to be false. Some suggest that because of its dog-like appearance, people may be reporting seeing Tasmanian tigers, when in fact they are catching glimpses of dogs. Either way, some scientists are focused on trying to bring the Tasmanian tiger back from extinction, although this practice is generally frowned upon by many scientists, as extinct species had their time, and reintroducing them would have severe ecological and ethical consequences. It is not so black and white for the Tasmanian tiger. Andrew Pask at the University of Melbourne is an epigenetics professor and aims to use gene editing to resurrect the Tasmanian tiger. He and the other scientists, who founded the Thylacine Integrated Genomic Restoration Research Lab, argue that the species' extinction was a very recent extinction event driven by humans, and their habitat and ecosystems still exist today. This means that relatively fresh DNA is available to them to use, and they may well still be thriving today had it not been for the introduction of humans into their habitats. This is unlike the extinction of the dinosaurs, which was an entirely natural case. If resurrected, it seems that the Tasmanian tiger will likely be able to fit back into the niche in which it once roamed. Scientists have already mapped the genome or blueprint for the Tasmanian tiger. It is the highest quality genome for any extinct species. They plan to use its nearest extant relative, the fat-tailed dunnart, to provide living cells for the de-extinction project. Successfully bringing back a species from the dead is an incredible achievement, but is it the right thing to do?
Today, you may think orcas or great white sharks are the apex predators beneath the waves. But once there was something that would make these species look like mere goldfish. We are of course referring to Megalodon, the mammoth shark that lived 23 to 3.6 million years ago. It was a formidable predator of its time. Estimations of its immense size vary wildly. Some say they grew up to 18 meters, 60 feet long, and weighed as much as 60 tons. If you were to swim alongside one, not that you'd want to, you would be dwarfed by its pectoral fin alone. And if it opened its colossal jaws, it could swallow you with one gulp, and you wouldn't even touch its sides on the way down. Thankfully, this prehistoric shark doesn't still exist today. Or does it? Surely in the vastness of the great ocean depths, these incredible freaks of nature could still be lurking, undetected, patrolling the darkness. It's an interesting thought. Marine biologists are well aware that there are thousands of undiscovered marine species yet to be found in our seas. The deep oceans are some of the least explored places on Earth. With each new exploration, researchers uncover new and unique species not found anywhere else on Earth. Although most of this novel sea life is at the small end of the spectrum, could there be a giant megalodon hiding in the dark? Some believe that this is possible, but this theory has a certain Loch Ness Monster ring to it. Nobody has even seen it, yet some believe that it is still there. So if the megalodon did still exist, where could it be hiding? The most obvious place is the ocean depths. If it was anywhere near the surface, then somebody would have seen it by now. What with our busy shipping lanes and constant monitoring of the Earth through satellite images, drones, and aircraft. Somebody would have seen a glimpse of a colossal dorsal fin slicing through the surface of the ocean, or the dramatic impact as it torpedoed into an unsuspecting blue whale. But if it were swimming deep below the surface, then it could go undetected, to some degree. The Mariana Trench is 11,000 meters, almost 7 miles deep, and lies beyond the abyssal depths. It is a place that is devoid of light. What little life there is down there is largely microscopic and lives in the slimy, oozy mud on the ocean floor. Other life forms include sea cucumbers that crawl along, playing a vital role in nutrient cycling. Scientists have recorded snailfish at 8,000 meters, but measuring less than a few feet at the most, these were the largest organisms discovered at those depths and under that pressure. So could Megalodon even survive at those depths? Most deep-sea dwelling animals have adaptations for surviving under such an enormous amount of pressure. With the weight of the sea bearing down on them, many have flexible skeletons, or no skeletons at all, compressible lungs, chemical adaptations to stabilize proteins at that pressure, metabolic adjustments to conserve energy, and specialized swim bladders to maintain buoyancy without being affected by the surrounding pressure. If Megalodon had all of these adaptations, then there is a chance it could withstand the pressure of the deep ocean. But that's not all it would have to worry about down there. Scientists believe that Megalodons prefer warmer waters. Temperatures at the Mariana Trench range from between 1 to 4 degrees C, 34 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's not thought that they would be suitable for the giant shark. Besides, would there be enough for it to eat down there? If mud-dwelling microorganisms and a few snailfish are all that inhabit the very deepest of the world's oceans, like the Mariana Trench, then this is hardly going to sustain a 60-ton monster predator, let alone an entire population of them. But rise in the water column to about 1,000 to 2,000 meters, 3,000 to 6,000 feet deep, and there are much more inviting things on the menu. The colossal squid is a hunter at these mesopelagic depths, and measuring up to 10 meters would provide some nutrition for the Megalodon. But 20 million years ago, Megalodon didn't feed in the depths. It had its pick of a diverse array of prey to choose from other sharks and sea turtles to its favorite meal, the cetaceans. Dolphins and particularly baleen whales were plentiful during the time of Megalodon. There were more than 20 different species of baleen whales alone, compared to just 6 today. These came in all different shapes and sizes, with the smaller species being most sought after for the giant prehistoric shark. Except for sperm whales, cetaceans don't dive particularly deep, so hunting them would require the Megalodon to come to the surface. It is unlikely that we wouldn't have spotted some sign of it if it was still alive today. Besides an actual sighting of an enormous shark devouring a humpback whale, we would likely see the corpses of whales washed up on shore with massive bites out of them. But what about some of the more remote areas of the ocean, places where ships don't venture, such as nearer the poles? Could Megalodon be swimming in the seas surrounding the Arctic and Antarctic? For one species that is still alive today, that's exactly where it hides out. The rarely spotted Greenland shark is the oldest living vertebrate in the world, reaching 500 years old, and spends most of its time in depths around 2,000 meters, 7,200 feet. It avoids human activity, only coming to the surface to take unsuspecting seals or whales. Otherwise, it is a mysterious shark, and one of the largest species alive today. Some scientists think that whilst the megalodon preferred warmer waters, when the seas began to cool towards the end of its supposed extinction, the megalodon was forced into smaller and smaller, warmer water pockets. It is thought that this contributed to its demise. However, some say that the temperature proved less of a problem for the giant shark. Although they preferred warmer waters, they were capable of surviving in colder conditions, owing to their mesothermic bodies. They lived in seas that ranged in temperatures from 1 to 33 degrees C, 34 to 91 degrees Fahrenheit. So they can tolerate colder waters. Perhaps the great megalodon is lurking in the polar waters, keeping its distance from human activity and having adapted its lifestyle to take advantage of different prey found in those waters. Although the deep oceans or the polar seas would be the obvious place for megalodon to be hiding, there would be more evidence around if these gigantic sharks were still alive today. Not least of all, teeth sightings. Like other sharks, megalodon shed its teeth and replaced them with new ones. It had 250 serrated teeth in its jaws, spread over 5 rows. Fossilized megalodon teeth are relatively common to find. If megalodon was still alive, then people would be finding fresh teeth washing ashore, just like they do with other species of shark teeth today. Not only that, but the fossilized teeth of megalodon are all dated to between 23 and 3.6 million years ago. There are no more recent fossilized remains of megalodon. There could be no other explanation for a sudden stop in fossilized teeth other than the species going extinct. One of the contributing factors to megalodon's demise was the changing climate and the reduction in sea levels. The coastal areas that it had relied upon to hunt dried up along with its prey. Today, the sea levels are still lower than they were when the megalodon was at its prime, so the conditions still aren't suitable for the great marine predator. Besides, it would be difficult for megalodon to exist today. Its niche was filled a long time ago. The much smaller and more agile great white shark rose to dominance and thrived where the megalodon did not. The changing sea temperatures brought change to the massive shark's diet. Many whale species became extinct, and being so enormous was a disadvantage when prey was more scarce. The smaller shark species required fewer calories to stay alive, and were able to find smaller habitats in which to dominate. The demise of the megalodon, which scientists are certain of, led to many other great species. With such an enormous and formidable predator out of the way, whales were able to evolve and develop. Only after the megalodon disappeared from the oceans did the blue whale come into existence. They were able to grow to the great lengths they do today without the risk of being eaten. Today's marine ecosystem has evolved without the biggest apex predator around to stop them. When one species falls, another develops. And whilst there might not be any gigantic sharks lurking in the Mariana Trench, there may be other weird and wonderful creatures that humans had yet to lay their eyes on, which, in this day and age, is a remarkable thing. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment with what you would like to see in the following videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.